speaker is Professor Ganesh. He belongs to the Department of Biological Sciences and Bioengineering. So I'm happy to tell you that he's the most powerful dean in the institute. Everybody is connected to R&Ds. Also, his office is the largest. Some of you may be happy to know that his PhD is from PhD. So when you work with Rajiv, Professor Rajiv. Professor, the quote here keeps coming here. English. He has a postdoc from IISc Bangalore. He joined Weekend Brain Science in Japan as a staff scientist. He was in Japan for many years. Now, he is the winner of quite a few awards. Just trying to read the latest. Humboldt Fellowship, GSPS also. Tata Innovation Fellowship. He's in the list of top 25 scientists published by India Today. So as Dean R&D, so he's going to address us in his capacity as Dean of Research and Development and also a practitioner of research over several decades. So very happy to invite Professor Ganesh to this program. One more announcement. I have two short announcements.
Sure.
Yeah. Maybe. When you give us, we need some data to be sent to LPUs in the group. Date of arrival, time of arrival, flight number, etc. Please write that down and collect, and maybe this evening you can give it to me. So that is one. Second is there is a heavy amount of discussion on Sunday activities. Something is cooking in the background. Let's see what happens. Please be patient. And Anish, we are working on it. So maybe this evening I'll be able to tell you something. So that is the second announcement. Third is I've requested Professor Ganesh also to moderate discussions of it.
Yeah, that's fine. Take it. So yeah, thank you. Thank you, Professor Muralidhar, for the introduction, kind introduction. And Professor Muralidhar is a veteran of several administrative experiences, and he was the former Dean of Research and Development. So actually, I suggested that he should be the best person to even present on the R&D activities, but you sort of asked me to do. That's why I'm here. So thank you for giving this opportunity. Yeah. So yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks. Very good morning to all of you. Indeed, it's a privilege to share some of the experiences and practices that we followed at IIT Kanpur. I would start this little discussion with this disclaimer. I'm not an expert in this area, okay? So I happen to head a section that administers research grants, projects, research and innovation ecosystem that includes our incubator. Therefore, what I'm going to share with you is my experience as an administrator and to seek your thoughts on some of the challenges that we face. I'm sure the challenges are common to all of us in an academic institute where we administer any R&D activity. Therefore, we can sort of share the ideas and thoughts and how we can improve this particular activity in the institutes. So that's the disclaimer, and then I'll start with giving a little background about how the R&D ecosystem at IIT Kanpur is sort of organized, which evolved over several years, and what are the challenges that we face and how we handle some of these issues. and then where possibly one can grow and what are the demands, needs, and a kind of a future vision. That's exactly I'm going to sort of discuss in another 50, 60 minutes. So if you look into the R&D office at IIT Kanpur, it looks at these are some of the major activities of the R&D office. Of course, it deals with mainly the extramural grants. So any grant that you get for R&D is parked at the R&D office, including the finance, is handled by our office, and which includes the grant application endorsement, grants management, and even approving the purchase proposals, and then the manpower recruitment. We have close to 1,200 manpower under R&D section, and of course even giving subcontracts. Probably you have had a large project and part of the activity that you wish to do, we don't have expertise, we have to give it to somebody else. Even that is being handled by the R&D office. So this is what we call as sort of input that comes to the institute, and then what are the expected outputs? Some of them are listed here. So you have, as an academic institute, the research publication is one of the major goals. And then, of course, there are departments and units that really work on policy documents. It's not something like a research papers, but they come up with policy as to what should be the future, how the guidelines and things like that. You also deal with what is called as a technology transfer. You have developed an IPR, a know-how, and you wish to transfer it to the industry. We deal with that. And then we take care of all the patent filing from the institute. And also we have a vibrant incubator in the institute. Currently we have about 53 companies that are incubated, and that also comes under the Dean R&D. So basically this is what I would call it as output. If these indicators do well, that means that you are done reasonably well in reference to what you received as an input. This also leads us to what is called as generating revenue within the institute, what is called as intramural grants. As all of you know, whether it's the institute, IITs, NITs, or central universities, the grant that we get from ministry is very, very limited. Mostly it covers our salary and maintenance. For research, we have to depend upon the external agencies. And if you could sort of develop some resource within the institute, that would be a great help for our research activities. So we do it by getting when you license patents or when you transfer the technology, and these are the little incentives that we get to generate fund within the institute. The other section of the R&D office is we have several units which includes, for example, central facilities. These are the facilities that really help the researcher to do their research. It could be, for example, a plant that produces liquid nitrogen. So number of researchers required liquid nitrogen. So we have a plant, and we also have centers, for example, advanced imaging facility where you have a very high resolution TEM, and we have a number of such centers. There is one called Advanced Center for Material Science. Professor Anish Upadhyaya was the former head. He could explain, and we will be going to that particular unit this evening. You can have a visit because one of the large centers which houses all the analytical equipments. And we have likewise several such facilities that are directly under the Dean R&D in terms of administration, because that becomes easier for us to run. And that also gives a challenge, because as and when you have a repair or service or anything to be done, then how are you going to meet that particular requirement? That is also something that I would discuss a little later. And then we have a legal cell which looks into the contract and other things. And we have an IPR cell which takes care of the patent and technology transfer. And these are the other activities that are under the Dean R&D office. And another important activity of the Dean Research and Development is also the investment cell. So how do you generate revenue? One of the ways you can generate revenue is when you get a grant, you don't spend the entire grant within 30 days. It stays for 10 months, 12 months before the year end. Therefore, there is a money parked. So what we do is we invest that money, for 30 days, 20 days, 15 days, 60 days, or different modes of investment looking at what is the expenditure record, and therefore you gain a little interest out of it, and that we pull it to the what is called as intramural grant. So this is how we also invest. And second, we have what is called as overhead in every grant. So the overhead at IIT Kanpur, we have different models. The overhead for different activities varies, whereas if it is a consultancy project, then you have a higher overhead. If it is a conference workshop, it is pretty low overhead. So whatever comes, then there is a distribution between the institute, the PI, and the department. A larger fraction of it remains with the institute, and that is administered by the Dean R&D, and we invest that money again to generate kind of a revenue. And we also use that interest that comes out of the revenue, we use for our manpower. For example, the Dean R&D section, we have about 56 employees, of which probably about 40 of them are contractual employees that we hire using the fund that we generate, using either investment or out of overhead or whatever, right? So that is how the system works. Sorry, yeah.
Regarding investment, except depositing the money in bank and getting the interest, what could be the other investment?
We are not allowed to do anything else. That is what it is. Yeah, we can, short-term deposits we can put it. Yeah, that's what it is. So the other major activity is the regulatory committees, especially if you have projects that deal with biomedical research or psychology or sociology. Then you involve, for example, human subjects, or you use animals, or you use some microbes and so on. And these kind of projects needs to be cleared by a regulatory committee, and these are mandatory for even before you submit the proposal. So there are committees which are under Dean R&D, for example, Biosafety Committee, Animal Ethics Committee, Human Ethics Committee. These committees really look at even PhD projects, to clear them to, conduct the experiments. So this is not only to bio department, we have several projects coming from, for example, HSS or, social sciences or civil engineering, chemical engineering. Again, these are, under the administrative, control of the Dean R&D. And of course, the other major activity of Dean R&D is also support to the new faculty, And when I say support to the new faculty, this includes, for example, giving them a startup grant. So at IIT Kanpur, the day they join as a faculty, if they submit an application, 3 lakhs is given to them immediately without any question or any proposal. They can start using it for their research purpose. Within a week, 10 days, 15 days, they can submit a proposal for a startup grant, which is up to 25 lakhs, which is again, screened by a committee headed by the Dean R&D, and then in about 30 days, we give the money as requested by the PI with certain guidelines, and that is again a flexible startup grant. We also give nowadays manpower for the first year, because the faculty may not get a student immediately upon joining, so you need some, in cases, manpower, or some projects may require a lot of travels, like for example in management or economics or in HSS, they go for a lot of field work, so then therefore it is very flexible. That is given within 2 months of their joining, and then you also help them with grant proposal. We guide them as to what are the important elements that should be considered, and they write or submit the proposal, and also we give great support in grant management. This is one office is extremely effective. In fact, some of my colleagues can vouch for it. If you need a UC, which is very urgent, we can make it in 24 hours. That's that efficient the office works, and that's something that really helps the new faculty to start their research career. So that is also something that comes under the Dean Research and Development at IIT Kanpur. So then, of course, you have other, which I have not listed, is we also have an establishment. We have what is called as hostel for all the R&D staff that is maintained by Dean R&D. So we pretty much, this is a self-sustaining model. There is no subsidy from the institute for running the R&D hostel, because everything has to be run from the overhead and the user fee that the residents pay for it. Yeah.
Inside the campus?
Yes, within the campus. We have different models. There are studio apartment, you have single room, shared room, depending on your cadre. So somebody is like Ramalinga Swami Fellow or Ramanujan Fellow, Inspire Fellow, or a Serbian scientist, they get a studio apartment-like facility. Institute provided, and also from the R&D earnings, we invested in the building, we invested in the maintenance. So it is, yeah. Not everyone, majority. So there are guidelines. For example, we have a large number of technical, administrative, and scientific cadre. Okay, approved as per institute norms. If your funding grant doesn't say anything about what should be the manpower, then one can use institute norms for appointment. Then if you use the institute norms, then we sort of say these are the people in this designation are eligible for the hostel. Then there is a wait list, and depending on the availability, we do give. Yeah.
So all activities under Section 8 company?
No, it is not.
You are putting some deposits and earning.
No, we are allowed to do even.
Benefits are available.
Yeah, it's even institute. In fact, now recently the ministry has asked every institute to invest. They are not doing, so it is not Section 8 company. The incubation is something that we are going to move towards Section. The rest are all within the institute norms, right? Yeah. Right. So that's something that being. Then of course there is a crisis management, right from legal notices for violation of the contract or complaints on research conduct, or issues with appointments. All these appointments are contractual, so you have a contract to sign, and often there are always you expect somebody to file an RTI or a case against the institute saying that you have terminated my contract, you have not extended, though the project is running beyond whatever the contract period. We handle them, and then of course the audit, because the finance for all the extramural grants are with R&D, so we also have to respond to all the audit objections or queries. And of course there are, as you expect in any institute, there are large number of internal complaints that you have to deal with. So these are what you call as.
Can you elaborate on what is complaints on research content?
Yeah, one, for example, a paper is published, somebody who earlier worked with that faculty says that I contributed a lot to this project, and that is published. I don't see my name as one of the authors. Or somebody writing, they said this is what you have published.
Even the thesis plagiarisms are done by your.
No, that is a different one. We only deal with research things. So thesis plagiarism is handled by, there is a ethics cell, academic ethics cell. So that deals with. We normally, what we handle is on R&D, staff and related queries. Yeah. Right. So these are some of the issues that will come. Right. Yeah. So the question is, what is the leadership role here, and why do you need leadership? What is that so important here? I'll give some example. In fact, the deanship among the IITs, IIT Kanpur is the one that started. The first dean for R&D was created in 1966. The same year, dean for faculty affairs was initiated. This is the first IIT I was told that started. And some of the previous deans are like stalwarts. One name is everyone you would recognize is C.N.R. Rao, one of the former dean of research and development at IIT Kanpur. So actually, this really taken care of administration from faculty point of view, because everything in old IIT is run by the faculty, and including the finance now is under the Dean R&D. That's how we have shifted very early. Therefore, otherwise in a typical university, the registrar is one somebody controls, and it's very difficult to talk to registrar. It becomes a big bottleneck. But in IITs, the finance also is regulated by the faculty who are deans and so on. So that really, something which came up very early in 1966, the Dean for Research and Development. And obviously, a dean doesn't work on his own. So invariably you have what is called as an advisory committee. Here, for example, at IIT Kanpur, we have IRDC, Institute Research and Development Committee, and that committee really, discuss about the policies, needs of the institute, and this committee is not only faculty. So you have faculty, we have, the in charge of different facilities. We also have the project staff that are representing there, and so on. Therefore, we take input from, sorry, yeah.
Do you have some external members in this also?
Not in IRDC, but we have for example, we have investment committee. There we have external members. We have the IPR and, for example, the technology transfer. There we have external member. Then we have advisory committee for our incubator. So we have. So then what happens? Their inputs are, coming from the incubator to the IRDC discussed here, and then that's how it goes for the approval. So that's the process. So there are many other. For example, even a facility would have user committee, right? So the user committee come up with the policy, and then the convener present it to the IRDC, and that's how we take it. So it's a kind of a very good mechanism, though it might sound like it takes time, but really addresses everyone's need and sort of takes care. Yeah. So that's what it is. So we have faculty colleagues, young and established, who are members of this, facility managers, contractual project staff, and as I said, external experts in respective domain. And of course, we also have our joint registrar, assistant registrar, part of that a team, because they would tell what are the logistical problems. Like you have to take input from the administrative staff as well. Therefore, it's a very, very a good mechanism. Possibly you can think of how you can implement certain policies or even come up with policies. So the committee understands that there are problems. It's not that it's a highway. So if you look into, there are always blocks, the impediments, then But what perhaps the committee can do is it can caution, and it can come up with ways by which you can sort of navigate the system. It is not to say that you cannot do this. So you come up with certain problems, you say that, oh no, forget about it, you can't do this. But we come up with always a way to say that, yes, this is not doable, but possibly you can do the other things. And then you also caution that what you expect in the future. Therefore, you safeguard and protect the PI, make sure that they are able to deliver by executing whatever projects they got, for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is. So that's what it is. In this process, what we have is a good teamwork in which everyone contributes to the thinking process, coming up with the policy and its implementation. Therefore, it is developing leadership, not just a leader. So anyone can be a leader, because everyone contributes, everybody thinks, and that perhaps is good. The R&D division is one of the good examples as to how you can put together a team that works. Regardless who is the dean, the office functions beautifully. It's not like I came in, made a huge change. No, everybody contributes. Therefore, it doesn't make a huge difference. My term ends, somebody else come. The system works excellent. So that is something that great here. And of course, there are always issues that you need to evolve, and that evolves. For example, now we have come up with ways to take care of industrial projects. So the industrial projects, you get it for 3 months, 6 months, 1 year timeline, and you have to execute. Now, for some of these projects, you have to get chemicals and part of the equipment or whatever in a shortest period of time. So if you get into the GFR mode, you're already 2 months gone, 3 months gone. So we have really pressed the need for such kind of kind of a waiver from GFR 17. Our board has approved for all the industry projects where they don't insist that you should follow GFR 17. Now you can go ahead and do a different kind of purchase process. All this happens because of the committee really helps in putting the points and convincing the board that this is doable or this should be done. Therefore, the board sort of approved now. That is something that we are going to implement. And there are many such exercises we do. For example, the delegation of powers in case of finance, up to what amount a bill can be passed by an assistant registrar or superintendent. So we have delegated that. Therefore, the file do not take much time. It need not go up to the dean or director for clearance. It can be cleared much early. So these are the things that one has to evolve from within the system. Therefore, it can be more efficient. So when you talk about projects, this is what it is. Like, typically in an academic research institute, when you have a large project, it's a burden because you have to invest a lot of money, not only in doing research, but to even manage the products, right? So that becomes a big question, why should I have a research grant? Like the young kid asking with all the baggage, why should I go to school? But all of us know that the extramural funding that we receive is very, very important for our professional activity, because Although we are teachers, we are expected to do research. That's how we are judged when it comes to promotion and so on. So therefore, it gives you, the extramural grants gives you financial independency. In the sense, you want to become a member of a society or you want to go for a conference, the grant that you accumulate, like Professor Muralidhar explained, the overhead, from the overhead we give 20% to the PI. Like this is called as a professional development account. So 20% of the overhead from any project that I get, that goes to my professional development account, which stays until I retire. So it's nothing like money lapses, right? Over the time, if I have more and more grants, I'm going to do more and more grant coming to my PDA as well, and it gives you complete freedom to do what you want. I can hire a project staff, I can buy an equipment, I can pay for a membership, I can pay for my pay charge of a paper, I can go for a foreign travel, right? Yes, yeah.
State agriculture universities, we call it revolving fund.
Mm-hmm.
One type of, you use the word profit.
Right, yeah.
It's revolving.
Great, yeah. Yeah, please.
How do you distribute this overhead? Like 20% go to EA, but there are some other portions.
Right, so 60% stays with the R&D,
Alright.
remaining 40%, 20 goes to the department, 20% goes to the PA. But if it's a consultancy, there is a different mode that we work on. So yeah.
This 60% you can spend on your office or
No, 60% stays with R&D. Yeah, yeah.
R&D. Or
R&D.
R&D can use this money to
R&D is free. For example, the manpower
Yes,
that
yeah.
we have paid to that. Right?
or management of this postal everything.
Absolutely. And whatever remaining we invest, and then we sort of increase the fund that you invest.
The formula in this NRDC is 60% goes to the team, 30% institute and 10% development.
Okay?
NRDC.
Okay.
If you can do this activity through NRDC,
Okay.
Government of India.
I see. Okay.
So this is new formula.
Oh, okay.
In consultancy also.
How do
the
you
PDA
bypass GFRs?
Not bypass. We take approval of a board. Therefore, see, we follow what the board says.
No,
Now, the
no.
exceptions can be, the board can approve that.
Board can
But how do you take care of audit people?
Yes, so the way the board approved, the way we put a proposal is that any grant that we get from any ministry or any funding agency which stipulates that we have to follow the 17, we must follow. There is no escape. But I may get a grant from, for example, the industry, right? They don't really talk about the 17, but we are supposed to complete the project in time, consultancy project. So I cannot wait for 30 days tendering and wait for a thing and then negotiate, and by then the project gets over, I cannot even complete. Therefore, we have, put the request to the board that in all such, grants in which the sponsor is not asking us to follow the for 17, we can give waiver, it would be great, and they consider it that.
To which level you have the power of using the fund for R&D. For example, in our universities we have to go up to 3 lakh. Beyond 3 lakh, up to 5 lakh with the university program. Beyond 5 lakh, we have to go for e-tender. What is
Well,
the procedure?
so now if you take the GFR 17, it is same for everywhere, right? So 2.5 lakhs, because then you don't need to put anything on the website, so you get the 3 course and you can finish it. And beyond, over and above, then you have to go to the institute model. But in industry projects, we don't need to do that, right? We can put the tender above 2.5. This is yet to be announced. I just got approved. I have to issue an office order. Then you can put it in our institute, website, tender for 7 days minimum, and then we can go.
So attend-
Sir Ganesh,
Yes, yeah, please, yeah.
say typically for research project, we are getting 20% as overhead. So out of that 60% you are getting to your R&D, 20% going to PDF of faculty, and 20%
Department. It's called the department.
for institute purpose.
R&D is 60%.
So R&D is, that is so it is completely at your disposal to utilize.
No, sir. They all, I am let me put it this way. Though being R&D, is custodian of the grant,
Right.
I cannot decide what I should do. The VA decide what should be should, right? For all the projects, so I approve. For anything from this grant I have to do, it has to go, it has to be a proposal, it has to go to the director for approval. So therefore, there is always a
Even
that.
for recruiting
Absolutely.
staff and everything.
So we have certain grant dedicated for running our office, that is pre-approved.
Yeah.
And there are some grants approved large activity that I have to do. For example, if you want to establish a facility, or I want to establish a new wing of the RAS, so there I have to give some 20 lakhs or 15 lakhs or 40 lakhs. From this fund that is generated, you put a proposal and direct
No, see why I'm asking, because if you have fixed proportion, you put to the institute corpus, you cannot take it back to use.
No, it's
Both they are
again,
getting
I will ask
it's
that.
kind of
No, it's not a corpus. I can, every year.
So fund is available.
Yeah, that how much to invest is something that I can decide.
Yeah.
If there is something coming for PDA,
Let me first present him and then I'll come back.
Just quick question, what's the, financial power of making 3 lakh of
Now, 30 lakhs.
30?
30 lakhs.
30
Now, revised financial delegation, 30 lakhs, up to any purchaser up to 30 lakhs, I can approve.
from consulting also I was generating PDA.
Yes,
Means if the
20%.
20% from the consulting also.
Any overhead, the PA gets 20%. And for example, I have a consultancy project. I have, spent 80% of it, 20% left unspent. The unspent can be taken to PA in consultancy project alone. Okay.
Suppose purpose fund you want to utilize, you need a formal permission from the director. Which ceiling required?
Which was
Purpose fund you
Ah.
want to use for R&D or for any purpose. What is the ceiling lies with your office?
So for everything, for any large, there is a consensus, for example, for day-to-day activity of the R&D office and staff and all, I take decisions, right? But anything on, for example, large activity, then we normally put the proposal.
So we have
I think
ceiling is 10 lakh rupees.
Yeah,
Beyond
something like
10 we have to
I-
pay no license. Ours is a license.
Yeah, similar, yeah.
My confusion still persists.
Uh-huh.
In consultancy, suppose I save some money, that gets converted into PDA.
Right.
I will either take it or leave it as PDA. That is one part. But if institute is taking 30%, from that 30% of the institute, okay, am I
20%.
going to get some PDA?
20%.
From that 30% also PDA?
Yes, sorry, any overhead, the PA gets 20%, yeah. Right?
My question is distribution of these overheads that the PA is getting amongst his team, because normally big projects are a teamwork. So I have a CA, co-CA and a couple
Right.
of members.
Then the PI and co-PI have to come up with a formula and tell us how much we have to distribute. The PI tells, right, yeah.
What is the order of this overhead in project proposal? 10%?
Well, so we insist 20% for R&D, 25% for consultancy, and 15% for any workshop conference. That's the norm for us. But the sponsor agencies don't give 20%. DSC gives you 5 lakhs. Regardless what is your funding. So you have to live with whatever they give. Yeah. But for industry, yes, we insist on 20%. Industry we don't really, or 25% if it's a consultancy. And funding is important when it comes to even your ranking, because any of the ranking that you look at, they ask you how much extramural fund that your institute has developed, how much earning that you have, received in terms of, technology transfer, selling the patent, and so on. Therefore, it is expected that you really, increase the internal funding as well as the earning that has to go up, what you call as the intramural. So let's look at quick some of those issues. Not something that you don't know, but I thought that I will just give a brief, therefore I can build on the next topic that I'm going to discuss about. So obviously there are three basic, different types of, projects that you deal with. One you call as sponsored research project, which is basic research, and then you call as a sponsored contract research. I'll say why I put the word contract, and that is applied research, and then consultancy project, which is applied research, which is specific. So let's look into each one of it. So sponsored research, what you call as a basic research, these are often the proposal driven. Like I would like to do a research on particular area, so I am interested in that, I put a proposal, if the funding body likes it, funds, right? So it is pretty much the PI driven, aligned to the research interest of the faculty or the PI. Research theme broadly defined, you say engineering, science, or whatever it is, but not attached to any commercial outcome. There you really don't look for anything that leads to a product or patent. Publications are plenty, and then IPR, if at all, is generated. Normally rests with the university institute, although the DST now tweaking the rule now. Earlier it used to be that the institute, now there are differences. Now you talk about sponsored contract research, then of course it happens because the request is made by the sponsor. Often they put a call for proposal saying that you need proposals in a given area. You need to have multiple partners, maybe industry is a partner, because they have a specified objective and there are specified deliverables, so you have to align your interest with the call, right? Condition of the sponsor to be met to be eligible. It's not that you are exceptional, you'll get, but you have to have that kind of a background, and you should have that kind of a partner. You have to have an industry partner. Therefore, even when you talk about, what you wish to do, the industry's input is taken and so on. There are many such conditions attached to the bid. Outcome includes a product, process of commercial importance, or or it could be something that relevant to the country. It may not be in a sense that it is commercially viable, but it contributes greatly to the well-being of the country and so on. Faculty may publish some of the findings that is given, the academic component is kept, but there is also what I said, that there is a product process, therefore the IPR, and that can be negotiated. Often the funding sponsor, they can say that you need to take permission from me if you want to commercialize, or they will say that if you cannot commercialize it within 5 years, then the entire IPR should be put on the website. Therefore, anybody from within the country, they are free to use. There are a number of such conditions depending on which project you look at. Patents are often jointly owned by different PIs and so on, institute. The third, of course, is the consultancy project, which is the sponsor utilize the expertise skill sets of the faculty. Pretty much they buy your time, right? And sometimes it can be facility. For example, we have a number of facilities. For example, one of them is the National Wind Tunnel facility that we have. And this facility is something unique. Not many institutes in the country have it. So you need to conduct experiments, and it's not only the facility, but you also need the expertise. So therefore, this is something like, because of the facility, you get large number of such projects. Therefore, that is again comes under the consultancy mode. The sponsor fully own the IPR. You have no rights, except that you expect, they expect complete confidentiality. You cannot even sort of disclose what you have done and what they have asked, and at times can prevent the faculty taking similar tasks from, it's not their company, it's other company. They will put a clause that, okay, if you do this, then you should not be doing this kind of work with any other company, at least during the duration of the project. So these are the conditions that are attached. Therefore, they make sure that nothing is,
Usually in patent, whose name will be the patent? Institute or PI or HOD?
No, these are inventors. We don't, the head, dean, nowhere comes in. It is the inventors, okay? It can be student, it can be PA, it can faculty, it can be technical staff who are contributed. But the institute owns the patent, but they are the names of the inventors. Okay. So in these projects, no publication, it cannot go to the thesis, as all of you know, nothing can be disclosed. So that is the third thing. So if you look into the sponsored project, obviously these are mostly from the ministries. Some of them, trust also gives some funding. And then there are contract research. It is normally a partnership with industry or certain dedicated ministry or industry association. And of course, these are normally the specific firm or the industry that gives it.
Where do you place testing actually? Because
Testing comes in that, in our generic term, it comes under consultants because, the norms are taken care of.
some of the laboratories are basically.
Yeah, these are not routine testing when I talk about. If somebody is, coming to use a particular facility, there is a user fee, you pay, get it done and go. So that's really doesn't come in this kind of thing. There is no like a contract, nothing. So you bring a sample, you test is done. So there, the simple technical staff can give you a readout, that's good enough. But if you use a large facility for testing, even for you to understand, even design an experiment, you don't have expertise. So you have to come. So then it becomes a consultancy board, because you have to even plan the experiment.
Are the rates fixed actually for those specific services?
Yes, it is not for the large facility, but for routine testing, we have a very good setup. There are websites, it gives you all the details, how much. If you're an academic institute outside an institute, how much you have to pay. If you're an industry, it's 4-fold, 5-fold higher you have to pay for it.
Some website is there on the website.
Yeah, it's in
Dean
there.
R&D controls this rates.
This one center is Advanced Center for Material Science, where many of the equipments are kept, which will be going this evening, so
You're
you'll get to.
talking about central research facility. I'm talking about individually each department.
No, individual, it is a discretion because, so for example, I have a facility, I got it from a project, let's say, a project that I wrote and thought it is my discretion whether I should open it for everybody or not, because probably 90% of the time I am using it. So, but it is anything that we get, because of the, for example, fixed grant or anything, it is mandatory you make and, sort of open it for others. So it depends on what kind of discretion. Or the institute funded central facilities is mandatory, it is open.
Earlier, see this research, central funding, central research facility is a later concept. Initially, what happened was individual departments were having a lot of facilities, and they were offering services to different industries.
It is open here. Yeah.
Right. So there are so many tests, like imagine civil engineering, for example, and number of tests.
Yeah.
So now what happens is that becomes a big,
We have. So like what you are saying, civil engineering. We have facilities that are open and large number of tests are done.
majority of the faculty time goes in testing. So do faculty contribute time there or?
No, it is mostly run by the technical staff. So when it comes to testing, it is mostly run by the technical staff. The faculty do not spend time on it.
That is also routed through your cell R&D?
The payment, receipt and all those things are handled by us, and facility management handled by us. But we have coordinators, faculty in charge, and then staff who take care of it.
Are there any guidelines for this?
Yes, there are guidelines, yeah.
What is the share of these three components?
Well, great majority is this, followed by this, and I'll come to that also, right? Yeah.
If some student is coming from other institute or some university for research, short time period for 2 months, 3 months, 7 months or something, what will be the challenge?
Tricky question, because if a student wants to come here and do research for 2 months, 3 months, then they have to register as an external student. Therefore, they become part of the system. You cannot be a guest for like 1 week is fine. 2 months, 3 months, then they become. Then you are becoming one of the students. Right? Yeah. So there has to be a faculty who is hosting them. Then you become an internal student, so that your rates are as such it is within that. Right? Okay, so when you talk about academic and industry, there is always a gap, obviously, and also there are attempts to bridge it, right? It is very difficult, right? If you talk about, interest of a faculty in a kind of a research project, obviously, majority of us involved in the projects, which are thesis projects, and then great majority involved in sponsored project, probably about 40% or so in this contract research value and industry component, or very small fraction get into the consultancy. It also domain specific, In any engineering department's consultancy project is, you expect more as compared to a science or, humanities, social science, maths, they don't really get. So it depends, and an institute like ours where you have from fine arts to aerospace engineering, obviously you're going to see a difference. So therefore it is smaller. It's also smaller for many other reasons which I'll talk about little later.
Is there any weightage given to this aspect in the career progression?
Which aspect?
The industry connect and the research that you
I'll come to that as well. Yeah, I'll discuss on these issues when I come to that. So therefore, then if you look into these are generic. Don't quantify it. I'm just giving a proportion, right? So relative proportion of the faculty involved. Obviously, almost everyone involved in the thesis project, but sponsored project probably about 60-70% of them are involved or having at any given point of time. And this sponsored with where multiple agencies, including Industry Connect, it could be about 30% or so. Consultancy goes to a very small number, right? So that's where the challenge is when you talk about industry academia. The challenge is how do you really bring these two together, and the way we function, there are a lot of differences. For example, if you look into the overall goals, in institute, any of us faculty member, it is passion driven. I like this area I work. You could be in mathematics, but you may be interested in a medical problem. So, you are completely free to choose your area. And you always want to work on something that is cutting edge. Something is going to be on the forefront, right? But in industry, obviously, as all of us know, it is market driven, and then to have a competitive advantage. And the performance indicator here for a faculty is peer recognition, student graduation, publications. These are the ones that you count. Whereas for the industry, it is time to market, how long a product from conceptualization to the market, what is the time limit, and of course profit and market share. These are the indicators or the goals for them. So if you look into the funding pattern as to what industry does, the relative proportion of funding, almost all the consultancy obviously is coming from the industry, and sponsored contract research where there is a specific deliverable which could be of benefit to the industry, is there next to this. Sponsored project very little. There are industry which does support sponsored research, but when it comes to the thesis, you're almost negligible. They don't really care because that is where they are not interested in. But if you this slide is something. What I said was relative proportion of funding required for projects. That's what it is. When I say consultancy, I say the quantum of grant that is required for the project is not only the money that they give to the institute, but they have a lot of background know-how and other things that they have generated. Therefore, they put in a lot of money and they give maybe 20% for the project to be completed. Therefore, the funding, the initial contribution is very, very high, whereas for the thesis project is very, very negligible. And obviously, therefore, the funding that you get for running this kind of projects, you don't get any support for normally for the thesis, but sponsored research very little, but the contract where there is an industry component or consultancy, the industry pitch in a lot more. And why? And of course, there is always, when you talk to industry, they don't like institutes, they don't like faculty, right? They don't like not because we don't meet their expectation and demand. And some of the issues that I am putting, it is not exclusive list. You may have other points. I'm just putting some of them. Scope, for example, any research team or project that you work on, for us it is open-ended, right? You may complete the project with few more questions, whereas it is well defined for them. You chase good ideas and you do. I mean, you always have more relaxed view of looking at objectives, but in the industry it is well defined. Time, flexible, because you may have multiple projects, you have students and other things, that you are not a full-time researcher in that sense. Therefore, it is a part-time responsibility, whereas it is time-bound, aligned with other operations, because there are many other things that work in tandem in industry. Therefore, they want everything to come to an end at the same time. And then, of course, in academic institute, the resource that you use for your research is something that is shared and multitasking, so you have to wait for your time, or you may have other responsibilities, therefore you cannot give your full time. Here it is dedicated. There is a team that works for that particular project, therefore it is well defined. So this is something that there is always a problem when you talk about. They'll say, okay, can you finish in 3 months? Well, we'll see. I mean, that's what our response, but they get irritated. And why we don't like industry, right? So it is like a nightmare. Because when they come with any such project, then first they will say that, okay, let's sign one NDA. What is that? Non-disclosure, agreement. Then they'll say exactly what they wish to do and what they wish to do and so on. Once you sign that, then you understand the problem. And then if you agree, then you go for what is called as MOU between the institute and the industry, and that is agreed upon. Then you have, at times, for many industries would like to have multiple such engagement, an umbrella or master agreement, and then you have what is called as a PSA or project specific agreement, where the agreement is between a particular PI, so to say, and the industry and so on. So you may have partners from both sides and so on. And these agreements are not something that we are used to it, right? There are a lot of challenges, right? There are conflicts. What are the conflicts? For example, confidentiality is something sacrosanct in industry. They don't divulge anything without you signing NDA, and then they are very strict about it. Academic is very porous. I have some problem, I go and discuss with everybody. We make presentations. I mean, for us, that is the way we live. And that is something that is big no for an industry, right? Therefore, that is a big problem. For example, I cannot stop discussing any issue with my student because it is everything we discuss. But in an industry project, they will have an NDA. If my student did not sign that NDA, then I should not be technically discussing with my student, right? Indemnity is they are very protective. Anything that you get, and if there is a liability, they are going to get, any loss, they would like to share everything to you. right? That is indemnity. Then these are, clauses that, we can discuss, and they will say that, for example, you gave me some product or license or whatever it is in a process product, and because of which I ended up having a legal conflict with the third party, and the third party, suing me, and whatever legal expenses or the whatever penalty that I have to pay, now they'll transfer everything to IIT Kanpur, for example. Now, therefore, we have to be extremely careful when you look at the agreement. Then, what is the indemnity clause? The first thing is, we say no, we are government-funded institute, ours is an academic institute, we cannot agree to the clause, there is no indemnity. Whatever you give is as is, there is basis. You take it or leave it. They will not agree because they are putting money, right? Every penny they count. And then there is a negotiation. The maximum that we go is, if it is a 4 crore project from an industry, we agree to an indemnity clause where the compensation that we can give is up to 4 crores or the money that the industry has given. That's where we stop. If they say no ceiling, we don't agree, because there's even one such litigation can bring down the IIT because we don't have the money, we don't have the legal power or anything to contest any such industry. So we are not careful. So it is not something that I am talking about. 10 years back, the institute, we didn't have that kind of a wisdom or training to look at all these things. But now we have a dedicated team which looks into, we negotiate and try to do, right? IPR, they're very protective. They may give only 10% of the grant. And they'll say that we own the IPR, okay? Anything that comes out of it. Again, if you don't really go through the documents carefully, these are all hidden here and there. And then you agree, then you cannot challenge later, right? Because we are more interested in the money that comes than we help, that then you become less useful to us. And then conflict resolution. Again, that is another important point. For example, IPR, we generally say the intellectual contribution from IIT, IPR belongs to us, but we may give you exclusive right or rights with some condition. That is what we start with. Then we settle for what is called as a joint IPR. If there is a contribution in terms of money, in contribution in terms of background, information or know-how and other things that comes from the industry, then we go for joint IPR. And then when it comes to conflict, again, if it is an international company, they'll say, okay, you can fight us in a court somewhere, right, of their country, which we cannot afford. So we have to always say, no, Delhi. Or for you, it could be here, for us, it could be here. Or if they don't agree, then there are what is called as moderators. There are UN approved norms that are there. We go for that. Therefore, there is a third party which help us in dealing with that. So there are different steps that you take, and then agree to certain conditions. Otherwise, it is one way. They make sure that the industry gets everything. You get nothing, even it gets a legal case. So therefore, you have to really, really look in very carefully with the agreements, which may be 40 pages, 50 pages, and we have to have several rounds of discussion with the industry. They are not going to budge. So you have to say nothing doing, right? So that's the way you have to deal with. And often this requires you come in the early morning because it could be a year's time, or come late in the evening and have a video conference and talk to them, and you do it by learning through the process, because it is our office which handles that, right? So let's look into a particular scenario. That is funding for research in an academic institute. When you talk about what is called as a contract research, sponsored research and consultancy, this schema says about the sponsored contract research. That's very, very interesting, because this is a new type of funding that has come in recent years, right? So all this imprint, you bring in either a party, which is the industry, they contribute in kind or contribute in cash for the project, and they are involved in right from writing the proposal, right? So this is a new challenge, which is very, very unique, and that's very interesting. Now, who owns the IPR rights, right? Again, the industry will say that even if they give 20% of the money, they will say no, we won't, right? We have to clearly say no. It can be a joint IP. Say suppose there is a product developed, right? They will say that, okay, let us commercialize. And they will say, okay, we have anyway funded 28%, we'll take the product and we commercialize. So how do you, or they may have exclusive rights. How do you handle that? So can you really say that we'll share whatever your profit? They may say yes, but how are you going to ensure that how much they have sold? It's going to be a difficult task, and with the kind of support system you have in industry institute, it's very difficult to look into that. Yeah.
Usually, for public institute, we have to go for a non-exclusive licensing.
Sorry?
Exclusive licensing is not working.
Yeah, there are ways. I'll come to that. Yeah. So, so then we go for what is called, okay, we'll give you exclusive rights, but with the condition that SLF. For example, you give, for example, this is 4 crores, you give us 8 crores, we have a joint IPR patent, for example, but you have exclusive rights to commercialize. So what happened in the process? The institute has gained about 8 crores, right? So these are some of the ways you have to negotiate, but you cannot go, I mean, our thumb rule, it's not that you cannot, but we make sure that when we negotiate, we don't go below the total project cost. I mean, entire money they give before they have what is called as exclusive rights. So these are some of the thumb rules that we use. And right for first use, that is another thing. An industry partner may want to have the first, right for the first use of the product that comes out. And often, depending on the kind of a project that you do, there is a cooling off period. For example, it is a pharma industry, right, a drug industry. And it is very difficult for you to take any product that came up from an academic institute to test whether it is commercially viable. They have to redo everything, their lab, and why I'll come to that. And then they need to test that whether it can be commercially viable, or it could require a market survey. There are many depending on the condition. Then there is a condition called as, give them the right to test for commercial viability. They will not commercialize, but at the end of that period, they will say whether they wish to buy the product or wish to commercialize, or you can sell it off to a third party and so on. So that is something that is there. So that's where these agreements really important, because you look into each one of these clauses here, because once signed, you cannot go back. These are legal binding, right? So therefore it is.
MOUs on that?
Sorry?
Are you putting MOUs on that?
No. It's available intranet. Yeah, right. Because that is itself is one of the clauses, right? NDA. Because in MOU everything is listed, deliverables listed, it cannot disclose, right? So that's where it is, the thing. And of course, there are beautiful papers which gives us guidelines as to when you, I'm just citing one of the papers from science, which gives like what each party should look at the time of partnership. When you really write an application, even grant proposal or agreement, what I can do with the data, what I should not do, how I commercialize. Look into these questions and then address and settle for one way or the other. Once you are convinced, then you go for drafting the agreement or taking the partnership to the next level. So these are some of those guidelines that are available. More experienced institutes can share with such kind of an thing. So this is what it is. But regardless of the nature of the interest that industry has and academic institute we have, but there are many similarities. One, the industry has skilled manpower. Okay, the talent. Faculty and students in education is the manpower. I mean, they are skilled for a particular task. You have people for anything and everything, right? That's the difference. And they have this, innovation and commercialization, that angle in everything. So what we are is in the cutting edge research. Of course, both of us share this, one philosophy, either forcibly or on our own, is the social responsibility. Because as you know now, all the industry have to shell out some money for CSR activities. Some of them comes to institute, you have to tie up with that and so on. So that's where we can really work together. That's right, yeah. So these are some of them. But there are strengths, right, with industry that we lack. That's still the balance. Can you just guess what it could be when it comes to R&D? They are professionals. They have professionals, right? They put a timeline, they meet the deadline, they meet everything. That is one.
Real life data.
Sorry?
Real life data.
Whereas where we lack. So some of them I am putting, there could be many as you say. When you talk about good lab practices, ours is okay, right? And they are very good, they have to follow this. In pharma industry, if you want to really take a particular drug, that molecule that you identified, you want to go for clinical trial or anything, you want FDA approval, you have to show everything, right from your day-to-day lab notebook to your, your every equipment, whether it is calibrated, everything has to be shown. Otherwise, you won't get anything. Your equipment survey is calibrated. These are something that is routinely done, right? Whereas here, depending on whether you have money or not, right? Record maintenance, again we are poor. It goes away with certain PhD student and we don't know how to trace and things like that. There are issues. Reproducibility is another issue. There are a large number of papers that have come that, okay, this lab has done something, we couldn't get exactly the similar way and so on. So there are reproducibility problems. And the periodic review of the work, they say that every third month we have to meet and assess what we have done. That is industry practice. We may or may not do that.
How many labs are accredited with NABL? Then we have to maintain.
That's right. That they have, it's a must. For us, it is.
We have 2-3 laboratories, so we have to maintain.
That's right. So that's what I'm saying. So these are some other things that is, it is not a must for us. For academic research is okay. When you write a paper and submit, they are going to ask you whether your lab is accredited. This is academic research when it comes. But really, if you want to learn something from industry, yes, we should really look at. So if you are setting up a new facility which you are looking at, that's something you are going to take to the industry and so on, you may want to follow their practice. That is, you have to take these practices. There are some that we have the strength. We are much better than the industry. Can you guess? Transparency and openness. We are transparent. We give everything, there's any seminar, anything, you talk about everything, everybody knows. That becomes a problem when you want to file a patent for your thesis because it is disclosed, right? There are problems. And then we are good with problem solving because we, as a group from different disciplines, we can look at a problem and solve, which in the industry may not have the expertise. New methods, approaches routinely developed in institutes, right, which they would find it difficult to do. Research in new areas, because here it is a faculty driven. I may be interested in something that would become the thing in 10 years. I may be starting now, but industry really don't look at, because they don't know what would be the market force, whether the technology is ready and so on. So that's where we have. Again, if you so these are some of these. These are shared. So you know what exactly was done, and therefore others can check and say what the problem with your approach. Problem solving, we have multidisciplinary approach and all these things that they just now discussed. So these are something that we have strength. So when you have such kind of engagement, it actually is a big thing for the industry. That's why they come to us, even though we are not the professional when it comes to executing a research project, right? That's a strength. That's why the industry should come to us.
Let me tell you, Reliance, if it comes to you, and they will say, we will invest 50 paisa, you have to give us 2 rupees.
That's true. I mean, there's not only Reliance. I think every industry
Every industry.
must do, otherwise they cannot be there in the market. That's their interest, but you have to see what interests we have and how to deal with it. Yeah. So that's where the, this particular projects, we have to be extremely careful and seeing that how we can take care of all such, as I said, told you that excluding, a kind of a, sell-off where you can generate money, which can, come and increase our intramural resource, therefore, that you can use again for your infrastructure, research and so on. That probably in 10 years, all these projects would really put in a lot of money to the institute, and something great that the government has done. So that's end of that part. We are now coming to this particular category, consultancy projects. If you look into the earnings from the consultancy project, it is very little, 10%, and because of these reasons. And why? The academic value is less. So it is something which is not, you cannot, if one of you asked the question, can I show my consultancy project as a kind of a credential for my promotion? The answer is that is not really something that is encouraged. You are free to do, it gives you, earning for your PDA or to your pocket, but still that is not something valued very high because that doesn't contribute to the academic process of the institute. So that's why that puts a cap on, there are several models. In IIT Kanpur, we see that if you look into the number of days that you sort of work for a consultancy project, you should not exceed the holidays. About 60 days in a year, that is what you can contribute to a consultancy project. Therefore, it cannot be like, you work full time for a consultancy project in a month and you'll generate. Today's holiday, I'm working, yeah.
For consultancy, I'm talking about.
Yeah, we look into that period and then, yes, that's what I'm saying. that is what, that's how it is coming. Or, for example, your summer vacation, basically you can go out, right? So, but you stay there, so you are not applying for a leave, then how would you say that I worked for? So that is Sunday, Saturday or holidays you count for, that is how it is. So it's a kind of a, it's not a hard and fast rule, but it's a gray area, but still, that kind of a deterrence that you don't really do only that and nothing else, right? Please, yeah.
I wanted to ask, if you put some cap on the working days, is there a more consultant?
No, that's what you look into, that how many projects that you're getting, and then what is the duration, how much time you put in, the kind of a, cap on that, yeah. So then another important thing when it comes to consultancy projects, need to be aware of the conflict of interest, because I may have, number of projects, sponsored contract project with an industry, or I have a consultancy project. There are clauses that I should not be working on similar problem with anyone else. So now who is going to check, right? So these are some of those that you need to be very, very careful. And then you have to go by the undertaking. You cannot say that, okay, I have signed this, I forgot about it, I take up this one. So it becomes a huge issue. The huge issue is not only to us or this institute, it is worldwide. I'm just putting one paper which talks about conflict of interest in academic research, policies, process, and attitude. So if you want to really, for your question, like how many days you have copy, like, you have policy, if you put a document, it's going to be a lot of, oppositions or other thing, which is not again unique to us, it's everywhere. I'm just reading out. Most respondents were concerned about unlimited financial relationship, because consultancy project you can get consultancy fee. But a seasonal number also viewed campus policies irrelevant, right? Some expressed considerable anger over the process, policy implementation, rejecting the policies and all these things. So it says it's still a gray area, and it can be, argued one way or the other, but it continues. As long as it is not given too much of importance, it's okay. I mean, that is how it is, right? But it also gives a lot of earning to the institute. In that way, you sort of allow it, therefore it helps others and institute overall.
I think it's underrated.
Sorry?
The consultancy, as you are stating, is underrating.
Right.
Because I have done about my previous 15 consultancies has involved too much of R&D. Without that, I could not have pursued.
I understand, but the philosophy is
The concepts were extremely complex. There
Right.
were no previous solutions available.
Right.
We had to do lot of R&D, and then we could do it.
No, I fully agree. Nobody is trivializing the efforts put in a consultancy project, and specifically for that reason only the industry is coming to you, because only you can give that a solution. Therefore, that is not something that
Even academic and research inputs were of large scale.
I understand, but then who benefits? The industry benefits. Your other projects where you have learned, your students learn, and you are putting that thought process in solving a problem for an industry without any return, right? So the consultancy is something that is one-way traffic, except for the little fee that they give, product they give. The institute is not gaining academically, right? It's not something helping us,
It helps us. A consultant will always be a very good teacher.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm not denying all those things. These are the debates, and that's what I'm saying. So, but how far one should be involved?
I'm
Yeah.
just submitting that somehow it appears that it's a semi-crime doing consultancy.
Yeah, that's what I'm putting. I'm saying that this is not only here, everywhere there's a process, and nobody says that, oh, you cannot have another project. But that is kind of, there's always this discussion goes on.
It has
Yeah.
an academic and research value.
Right.
Somebody has to see that actually, and then allow it. Simply.
To be honest, we don't say, no, you cannot do a consultancy project. Okay. That is
But
always.
credit should also be given. That's what I'm saying. Recently, you must have heard in Eastern Coastway,
Mhm.
Rajmahal disaster occurred, 35 people lost their life.
Right.
And the literature is not available for fractured media failure criteria. So when the other industries, Northern Coalfield was that determine your safety. So for West Redout, we have to do full-fledged research, numerical modeling, and then we can.
I fully agree. You are saying all these things, but you cannot put it on the record, right? Likewise, I know, for example, Anish was involved in very, very sensitive
That's what I'm
issues I
saying.
cannot talk about. I mean,
Yeah,
you
that's
and
what
I,
I'm
we
saying.
know because we, signed the agreement.
I'm also into many defense
Absolutely.
things which I can't talk. But
Exactly the
but
similar thing. Yeah.
requires
So it
not-
it is there. I'm only saying that, as you are saying, it is unresolved territory. It is always there are people talking both ways. So it is an issue that is still not settled in academic institutes.
Put a thumb rule, not more than 3 consultancy in a year.
We don't put anything. We say that this is 60 days is the guidelines. we are believing that you are following this. Okay, that's how you go. Yeah.
What happens is consultancy comes at a much later stage when industry accepts you.
That's right. So that's very important. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So,
And
but
then putting a cap is
no, we are not putting any cap. I'm saying this what it is. Yeah, yeah. There is no cap. But this is the kind of a thumb rule that don't get into only consultancy, but you should have active research and things like that. Yeah.
unless we do that, we can't do this.
Absolutely. So that's what it is. That's when it may be a good idea that you connect, because the consultancy also tells us what are the problems that they are facing, and if you are involving a student in that, the students are also trained. These are the good thing about that, because the student at the end of the day has to get into the industry, whether he or she is ready for that kind of a challenges, and consultancy projects help. Again, consultancy projects also give you an idea as to what the industry is looking for, what are the future problems, and it connects you with the industry, right? Therefore, our institute reputation builds. The industry sort of recognize that you are a, think tank, right? That is something that is, so obviously all these are there. And this is what it is I'm saying, because these kind of inputs are extremely important, because if you look into this, something I'm taking from the World Economic Forum, they're saying this is in 2020, these are the top 10 skills, 15, this one is the 2020, this is what it is, very soon, right? If you look into that in 5 years, what are the major differences or jump, you can see that the creativity is something that is from 10, it is going to top the third one. So that's, the creativity is what something that is normally attached to the industry, because they have a constraint, you have to come up with, something new, therefore you can attack the problem. So that's where if you engage, as you are saying, in industry projects, and students are exposed to that, then they come up with this kind of an ability to, learn this particular skill set, that is creativity, and obviously they can do better. If they do better, the institute gets better ranking, better appreciation, whatever it is. And there are many other, important elements that are missing here, see? And you can see that emotional intelligence, cognitive flexibility, and, for example, cognitive flexibility is that you attack a problem in more than one way, independently, attack using both in one go. That's what I understand. And then emotional intelligence is how stable you are to face the challenges. These are new skill set that comes in, and probably training, students in this area, make them better skilled, therefore they can, do well in industry when they go. So these are the things that you can learn if you, interact with industry. And because these are the needs, because in academic field we are pretty stable. What happens? Nothing. I'm getting my salary, right? So therefore, the industry gives these challenges, and that's where the students can really learn. And if the industry may come to you if you are a top ranked institute or you are known for your field. Otherwise, why would they come? They go to the best because they are putting money. They're not going to put money on anyone else. So you have to be a leader. If you have to be a leader, then what you should do? What you have is the vision for the future. You have to look at what is the field that is going to emerge 20 years from now, and create infrastructure and think tank for that now. Therefore, you have people who work on this area. The industry may come when that is required. I'm just putting again, I'm not going to go to the details. Again, this is something that things to come, the technology, right? This is something that again, this is a compilation from various journals and others, and they talk about this year-wise, what is that's coming. So if you can look into it from, a large number of, technology that is likely to come or need of the hour, and it goes on until 2053, right? Now what it says is there are three major areas that is a recurring feature there. One is, of course, health. Because in 30 years from now, all the developing countries going to have a burden of aging population. And your family size decreases. It's going to be, health is going to be a major issue, like the Western world. And then environment, because it is worsening by day, and energy. These are the three themes repeatedly coming. And all these three themes are something that you cannot align to one core engineering, domain. It's all interdisciplinary. And when it talks about health, India lags behind because we don't have even a single university which has engineering, science, and medicine in one campus, except a few. right? And that's where we lack. That's where the Western world is fantastic. You talk about any university there, all these disciplines are there within the campus. That is something that we need to look and then build the ecosystem such that we identify problems and develop, infrastructure, areas, and identify researchers, we recruit. Therefore, we are ready for such kind of areas. Therefore, the industry may come to us, otherwise it will become irrelevant. That's all I wish to share. This is something that my experience I shared, and of course, many of you know better than me. Thank you once again. Yeah. So if there are questions or something, then we can discuss. Otherwise, if you are hungry, then you can go for lunch. Yeah, we have anyway discussion hour. Thank you.